The Israeli military has again been accused of forcibly using Palestinian detainees as human shields. Multiple investigations by international media have further supported what was initially an exclusive report first published by Al Jazeera back in June. Now, these are the images Al Jazeera obtained. They show Israeli soldiers forcing Palestinians into unexplored tunnels and homes across the Strip. Our reporting also found evidence of detainees dressed in Israeli military uniform and forced to go ahead of Israeli soldiers to check for explosives and possible booby traps. It's believed hundreds of Palestinians in Gaza have been used by Israeli soldiers in this way as human shields, which is a clear violation of the Geneva Conventions. Let's go to Michael Lynk. He's a Professor Emeritus of Law at Western University in London, Ontario. He's also a former UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territory, joining us now from Ontario. What do you make of these reports that the Israeli army has been using Palestinians as human shields in this way during the last year?
This is highly disturbing. And this is a pattern that I've noticed for a long time, particularly when I was serving as Special Rapporteur. But I can even go back to my own experiences working for the United Nations back in 1989 in the occupied West Bank, where I saw on several occasions young Palestinian boys being used as human shields, being put on the front of Israeli jeeps as they drove into refugee camps when stones were being thrown. Certainly the current descriptions of Palestinians being used on a promiscuous basis in Gaza to be able to check for booby traps or for snipers is precisely why we have such strong laws against this. It was banned by the 1949 Geneva Convention. That ban was reinforced in 1977 by the additional protocols to the Geneva Convention and the 1998 Rome Statute, which outlines war crimes that are to be administered and adjudicated in front of the International Criminal Court. Using civilians as human shields or using prisoners as human shields is absolutely forbidden and called a war crime.
Right. The reason these laws exist is because the use of human shields in war is not new. What seems to be different in this case, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Israelis are dressing Palestinian civilians in military garb and then sending them into tunnels or whatever it may be. I mean, that just alters the logic of human shielding, doesn't it?
It does. Keep in mind that the very essential principle of international humanitarian law, which governs the laws of wars, conflicts, and occupations, is to separate civilians from combatants. It's to ensure as much as possible that civilians are not caught in harm's way and are kept outside of the fighting between two opposite sides. And by either dressing civilians into enemy uniforms to be able to do these kinds of deeds, or even not dressing them in uniforms, but making them go into buildings, go into tunnels, go into contested areas where there would be sniper fire or gunfire, is absolutely opposed to this core principle of international humanitarian law, that civilians are to be kept outside as much as possible from the harm that combatants cause when they fight each other.
Is there any precedence historically of an army or individuals in an army being prosecuted for crimes of this nature?
There were prosecutions at the end of the Second World War with respect to this, with regards to use of civilians by Germans and by Italians, and that's what led to the drafting of the 1949 Geneva Conventions, which outlawed this particular practice. I know that the Israeli Supreme Court has ruled that human shields are not to be used, that the Israeli army cannot use Palestinians in this way. But this seems to be an edict coming from the Israeli Supreme Court that's obeyed more in the exception than it is in the rule.
OK, really good to speak to you. Michael Lynk, Professor Emeritus of Law at Western University in London, Ontario.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.